Hello, I'm Sharyl Atkinson. Welcome to Full Measure. This week, the French National Assembly votes on extending a state of emergency in effect since November's Islamic extremist terrorist attacks. Security is still high in Paris, with armed gunmen on the streets and at sites like the famous Eiffel Tower. For the French, that one horrific night became their 9/11. And as for many Americans, life may never be the same. Scott Thuman found the French are discovering a new resolve and patriotism.
Paris, November 13, 2015, the sounds of a city under siege. Terror groups targeting Parisians at random, a crowded theater, packed cafes and restaurants, a major soccer match, 130 dead, nearly 400 injured. And a nation that once survived the occupation of armies was now under attack by a new enemy, in this case one that didn't wear uniforms and promises to strike again.
This is Paris, and I'm an American.
The romance of Paris isn't just a product of Hollywood. It's inherent in the city's iconic monuments and picturesque cafes, captured in the phrase joie de vivre, the joy of life. But 3 months later, the shattered glass still sends an ominous message that the bullets pierced both lives and the way of life. At the Carillon Café, the site of the first shooting, patrons now sit with a careful eye, always alert as to what's around them.
The big thing now is that they are shooting people in the streets randomly.
Luc Marat owns this downtown restaurant.
There were basically nobody anymore in the restaurants. So the initial days just after, we had something like between 2 and 6 people on an evening to have dinner. So it was really empty.
2 and 6 people just for dinner?
Yes.
It has rebounded a bit, but to say it's back to what it was prior to the attacks would mean more than just filling seats. It would mean a level of comfort that's hard to come by. Here at the Bataclan, there are plenty of physical reminders of what happened. The bullet holes, barricades, fresh bouquets of flowers. But it's what you don't see, that invisible anxiety that folks here say has the most impact. What might happen the next day, what might be just around the next corner. And that is why the French are now admitting they have to live with what they call the new normal. Sioussine Siziad manages the Grand Hotel.
Because it's like every day you open your TV and they tell you, maybe you're going to dead today, maybe you're going to dead today. And that's terrible. I think the best thing is to not know.
In some respects, they did know something else was going to happen after the publishers of the satirical paper Charlie Hebdo were targeted in a deadly attack just 10 months before.
But we knew that Charlie Hebdo was a target, so at least there was an explanation. It was a big shock, but with an explanation. There it's another story. It's just people going out in the streets and shooting everybody, but it's pure bad luck if you are there.
The recoil is hard to ignore, especially among tourists who now stroll by soldiers with intimidating hardware on their way to France's most famous sites.
You see like the police with all the guns and it's kind of scary.
A lot of security. I kind of expected it, knowing what had happened, but definitely it's quite confronting just seeing it. I'm like not used to it.
I was thinking not to come to Paris for that reason. I was thinking, I think it's better to jump that country and continue our travel to Germany.
If it sounds familiar to us, political analyst Thomas Guinolet says it should.
In terms of state of mind in the population, we are just like the American population just after 9/11. In fact, that's what we have. And what I mean by that is pure and simple collective psychosis. We are in a state of global psychosis.
Just as all of America revived a sense of pride in old glory and anthems were sung with renewed emotion, France is feeling it too. A 600-year-old motto made a comeback here. Fluctuat nec merdigo, tossed but not sunk, like a ship battered in rough seas.
The machine right here, which is printing flags, was working all night and all day and during all the week.
Enzo Cronium says the run on this country's tricolors was unprecedented.
People feel more comfortable because before the events it was associated with extreme movements, political movements, and it was a bad scene of having a French flag in our house. showing a flag is now an act of going against the terrorists.
I think it was probably the same way. I remember going to New York about a year later, and I felt that everybody had come together. In France, I feel this too. I feel that a lot of the French are coming together.
Denise Prouvost is an American living in Paris who, with her family, runs a dental practice.
My neighbors were all talking to me. People were talking. In Paris, that doesn't happen so
there's a sense of community that didn't exist before?
Strong sense of community.
But to say that somehow this surge in solidarity is seen as a fix would be deceiving oneself.
We have to learn to live with the terrorism. I think the old generation, they did not know terrorism. Our generation of the 21st century, we have to learn living with the terrorism.
At the moment, we cannot have any proof that the problem is solved, and I think it's not solved anyway. So it might happen again in France, but in other countries too, in Europe or even in the US.
Which has produced another sobering similarity to the post-9/11 United States.
Just like in the United States after 9/11, we have a big problem of growing hatred against Muslim population. I'm not saying that Americans became, all of them, anti-Muslim, anti-Arab population and so on, but some of them began to feel very strong hatred against that part of the population. We have the very same problem in France right now.
You're seeing that here in France now?
Yeah, clearly.
And while such reaction would have been expected among some nations, in France this type of talk has long been taboo.
If I wanted to make a sarcastic joke, I would say that in France racism is the new black, basically, which is basic racist sentences. And something like 20 or 15 years ago, saying that, you would have been sacked from the government just the very same day. Today, you become prime minister.
Harsher laws similar to the Patriot Act, stricter border checks, and the open displays of weaponry, proof that this is a new Paris, with mosques under more watchful eyes and the glares from behind plate glass by now leery Parisians, makes many wonder if this city will ever return to its storybook setting.
I think it will return to normal, but it will take time.
But Paris is probably always going to be a target to some degree, no?
Yeah, probably. Probably.
And the attacks in Paris may have just been a dress rehearsal, according to French media reports quoting experts and intelligence officials who say 2015 was nothing, and that terrorists are moving toward a European 9/11 with the simultaneous attacks on the same day in different countries. Sharyl.
Even knowing that, what are they going to do about it?
Well, people we talk to say not enough. Despite the recent attacks, there were no firings or resignations on the highest ranks of the French intelligence services, and a lot of people say that's why there is now a lack of confidence in the system.
Really interesting perspective. Thanks so much, Scott Thuman. Ahead on Full Measure, with New Hampshire behind and South Carolina ahead, the political campaigns head into a whole new phase. We'll talk with two political kingmakers about what makes 2016 different.